Hi, this is Maya West of Moxie Lab, and today we're going to cover barrier or obstacle number 3 of the exciting topic of overcoming barriers or obstacles to our leadership path. In past videos, I've talked about all 6 of them in a summary, and then I'm going into depth on each of the topics so that you can dig in on the pieces that sound most applicable to you in your life. Today's barrier number 3, is on one of the obstacles that I'm most passionate about, which is for those who've had a challenging childhood or adulthood. What I mean by challenge is, I'm just going to get into it a little bit more in depth than that. And what I mean by that is trauma. One of the most important areas of research that informs my work is around trauma and how trauma from our past affects our brain and our ability to make decisions in our own benefit. And one thing that I am super excited about is, I joke around that I'm an amateur neuroscientist because if I could spend all my time studying this, I probably would, but then I wouldn't get anything done and I would just be this weird person who reads books on the brain all the time. But with that said, I've researched enough to indulge this idea around how our past traumas impacts our ability to make beneficial decisions for our future. The person that has most inspired this particular obstacle or barrier to your leadership path is Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, and I'm probably totally massacring his first name, and I should know it by now because I was introduced to his work 2.5 years ago, and it continues to inform what I do. He wrote a book a couple years ago called The Body Keeps the Score, and his contention in that book is that when we have had past trauma in our life, that it manifests itself in our bodies in very unique and interesting ways. And that this research actually isn't new, but for whatever reason it's been slow to adopt and kind of mainstream in how we treat people, how psychotherapists work with their clients or patients, how lawyers help our clients avoid issues that they may have gotten into because of how their brain responds to conflict. There's so many places where this work is important. Another example of it is that there are programs now that are working with teachers about how to learn about trauma in a way that allows them to best reach the needs of their students, especially young people who may not know exactly what is going on in their family of origin or be able to explain it, but the teachers can look for their behaviors as an indication of potential trauma in their life and also help be of assistance in how to educate and work with them in a way that works for those students. In my work, I want to know why people don't make decisions in their own benefit. And a traumatized mind is one that's been under what we call the amygdala hijack. Now, all that up to this point maybe doesn't sound familiar, but the next part will, which is fight, flight, or freeze. What do we do when we have a perceived stressor in our life that triggers some primordial part of our brain that thinks that it's going to die? And that's what happens. The brain literally is telling the body that it's going to die in those moments, whether that's accurate or not. Well, obviously there was a huge benefit to that. The woolly mammoth, attacking you or whatever, you were either going to fight it or you were going to run from it or you're going to freeze and play dead. So many demonstrations of that in the animal kingdom of how those just core life preservation models have worked to our benefit. And surely when a woolly mammoth is staring you down, or the saber-toothed tiger, or the lion, or whatever it is, there is a reason why our bodies react that way. And it's because we're trying to keep our body alive. Now, less appropriate are those reactions when you have a boss that's yelling at you, or you have a spouse that's raising their voice, or you have a friend who you perceive as not being safe, and that is like making you feel uncomfortable. In those situations, our brain still might think it's going to die and is having a fight, flight, or freeze response. That's the amygdala hijack part. Our brain's getting hijacked by a survival mechanism that's there to protect us, but is not appropriate considering our surroundings. So when you have had trauma in your past, that amygdala hijack can get kicked in all the time. If you've had trauma that's related to sexual violence, for example, somebody looks at you the wrong way, that could literally make you go into a fight, flight, or freeze response. If you've had a financial trauma of the past, say you've gone through bankruptcy or some type of other financial challenge, an unpaid utility bill might send you into a fight, flight, or freeze response. There are a million ways that response gets triggered by everyday life. What has been really helpful to me in learning about this work is that it helps us understand how we react to each other. So I can say to the person next to me, and we're in the middle of a conflict, oh, you freeze. athletes. Oh, you run. You know, there's all these ways that we see it come out in our modern culture. Like one of the more, like, I would say, you know, less kind ways to describe this is when people talk about man caving. Oh, the guy is going to his cave, you know. That's one way to explain it, but really it's an amygdala response to conflict, the flight or the freeze instead of the fighting, and it's a way of coping with conflict. What's really been most interesting about the trauma piece is that we each have had micro traumas. Some of us have had major traumas, right? There's a spectrum, obviously. But even the micro trauma is like a reference point to understanding both ourselves and maybe how some other folks act in that situation. So when we're in situations that we perceive as being conflict or scary, uncomfortable, we can learn more about ourselves in that by trying to have compassion for that part of ourselves that's just trying to do self-preservation, even if it's slightly off or out of whack, and also have compassion for others that might be having that same response. The fight one being the big one, you know, the yeller, the screamer. That is a amygdala response to that person feeling like they're going to die as well. And what I think is really exciting about this is that what we've learned about trauma, and especially the work of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk in his book, is that we can find ways to calm our mind so that our brains don't feel like they need to save us from impending death when we're applying to a college or trying to have a hard conversation with someone that we love or facing some new big professional goal that we've never had to encounter before. That we can find ways to calm our brain so that we make a decision from a clear, calm mind that's not there just to protect us. So fear is our indicator. If we're feeling fearful, that's our indicator that our brains might not be working in our benefit. That the stories that we're telling ourselves in our head might not be totally accurate because our brain is telling us to survive. It's not necessarily telling us how to thrive. And so as we move away from using that part of our brain that's trying to survive, if we can move away from that and to calm our brain and to give ourselves a time to calm down and to imagine our future in a good way and to kind of have an antidote to that brain that's saying you're going to die. The antidote is thriving. And the antidote is picking a future for yourself that's so exciting to you that you can say on this side of your brain, amygdala, calm down. My future is exciting and I am going to be thriving. I'm not going to be surviving. And I've got this. That conversation within yourself can actually create a wonderful, exciting future by helping balance that energy out. Today we covered barrier/obstacle number 3, which is a challenging childhood or adulthood involving trauma and what we can learn from that and how we pursue our own leadership path. Next week I'll be covering number 4, which is a really exciting one, which is conflict avoidance. And that gets into some of the things we covered in the first 3 topics that I think will be really helpful and give you some good tools for how to overcome some of these challenges for your own future leadership path. Thank you, and check out my website at moxielab.com for more information.